Hello, everybody. So, today I'm going to try to give you some insights into the main differences between Austrian culture and American culture. There are four different categories that I've chosen to talk about today, and keep in mind that some of these things that I might say about both cultures might be a little bit controversial. So, if you disagree with me, that's fine. Think about your observations and your own experiences of either one of these cultures as you're listening to this video. So, what I'd like to start with is the general mindset, the differences between Austrian mindset and American mindset. So, also keep in mind that all of this is according to my own experience as a teacher living in Austria, originally from America. So, with all that in mind, Americans, in my opinion, are generally more optimistic than Austrians, both in regards to their personal lives as well as their professional careers. The Americans have a mentality of rags to riches, that you can sort of do whatever you want in society and make yourself into whatever you want to be. It also is tied into the American dream, um, or the idea of the American dream. And this is a good phrase to know, just this rags to riches mentality of going from very poor to being very rich via your own ability to work and your own ability to create something for yourself. This doesn't mean at all that it's easier to become more successful or to have a better life in America, but it gives the illusion that all things are possible in all ways. And it also gives the impression that there is always kind of a shortcut to success, if one can find it, that is. And in Austria, there are specific rules about who and what and how one can become successful, in my opinion, whether that's determined by academic degree, family income, or other factors. And there's often a very fixed idea of how things are done, which can come across as being slightly close-minded. The second category that I'd like to talk about is food. So American food is really diverse in a way that Austrian food is not. There aren't really any traditional American foods other than the stereotypes that we hear about all the time. So burgers and French fries and things like that. But these stereotypes are mostly the result of big restaurant chains having monopolies and aren't really representative of what Americans actually eat on a daily basis. Or they don't really speak for the preferences of Americans or the average diets. The only thing I would say, though, about traditional American foods, the most American cuisine to me is kind of associated with holidays, or holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas, or sporting events. So with this, I'm thinking of apple pie, roast turkey for Thanksgiving especially, or even hot dogs in buns for like baseball games. People watch the World Series, and it's like a big thing in the stadium in Boston to have a hot dog. That's just like a standard part of American culture, I would say. The third category is humor, which is my favorite category. I think humor in different cultures is very interesting. And American humor really depends on the region. And because the country is so large, each part of the land has kind of its own nuances in how they approach humor. But as a general rule, it tends to be loud, boisterous, pretty self-righteous, and often uses a lot of analogies or comparative scenarios to make a situation or a person seem kind of laughable. And Austrians often have a very dark sense of humor and a sneaky kind of sarcasm that isn't always noticeable until you know what to look for, which is something that, for me as an American, has been hard to get used to. Austrian humor also tends to lean heavily or rely on political, social, or historical references, and also tends to be less politically correct. So Americans are known for being loud about political correctness, and I think Austrian humor tends to lean slightly more sexist or racist in a way that American humor does not allow itself to. The final aspect that I would mention is that popular American comedians tend to appeal to their audience's humanity and often make themselves the butt of the joke. They make fun of themselves, whereas Austrian comedians often rely on making fun of their fellow citizens or on presenting a situation in such an exaggerated way that it becomes funny because it's so absurd. So, and the final category that is also a pretty interesting one are relationships. So, Americans tend to define relationships more quickly and be more blunt about what they want. I think it comes from this mentality of um, maybe climbing up the corporate ladder or going for what you need or going for what you want. And I think Austrians tend to have a longer um, perspective on how to enter a relationship. They also tend to have longer and more serious relationships earlier in life. So, what I've seen here with students and also with people I've spoken to, like students or teens who are like 16 will meet someone, get into a relationship, and stay in that relationship until they're like 23 or 22 or even longer. And in America, people casually date each other until like all the way through college until they're 22 and might not have a serious relationship until after they've gotten out of university. And of course, there are exceptions, but overall, Austrians tend to see relationship statuses as kind of obvious or self-evident, and that you could kind of wait and see what happens instead of talking about like the terms of relationship and as if you were coming up like writing up a contract. And I think Americans talk very openly about what they're looking for and what their specifications are and what they imagine could develop out of an encounter where they've met someone that they're interested in. So that's obviously a very limited perspective on relationships, and it doesn't give you the whole picture. But it's at least a start. So those are the 4 categories. I hope you enjoyed this. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Please form your own conclusions about cultures and make sure to stay curious when you encounter things that you aren't familiar with, because that's a chance to learn, to grow, and a chance to encounter things that might allow you to discover something you never would have expected.